ever seen. And so this is good news, but it's the kind of news we do not want to take on a platform such as this or any other. It would be nice to belong to a country where kidnapping sounds like a strange thing. So welcome back, Dr. Ayiwo. We're glad that you're safe, healthy, but we're also hoping that others do not have to experience what you did. All right, straight to business. Primary and secondary schools in Rivers State resumed on March 8 for second term. This is according to the school calendar published in August 2020 by the State Ministry of Education. The first term ended on February 28 with a one-week holiday. To maintain COVID-19 protocols, most schools had adopted staggered classes of morning and afternoon sessions in order to avoid overcrowding. Schools have always been one to ensure the wearing of face masks and the use of hand sanitizers. Now, you and I know what happened with COVID and how it affected education. It's not breaking news. But 1 year later, how exactly are we doing? Are we in a better place or worse place? Apparently, the man who has the answer is on the phone. His name is Ikechi Nwogu, and he is an educational consultant. Good morning, Mr. Nwogu.
Good morning, Big Sam.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, and you?
I'm wonderful.
Yeah.
And extra excited for a couple of reasons. So,
yeah, things will not just abruptly stopped in March last year. In fact, some schools were given barely a few days to tidy up their exams and just go into the holidays, or otherwise what we could call safe mode, right? And eventually there were appeals. Can we embrace virtual learning? Can we educate the children while they're at home, because learning must continue. Learning is not something you just stop like that, irrespective of situation. But the beauty of all of this is we could compare school with school, and we discovered that the ratings were not really the same in terms of readiness to embrace virtual learning or embrace alternatives. And so while some children were still at home, no learning taking place, others were lucky to be in schools that had embraced ICT and had upgrading standards. I remember the drama, should resume, and all of that. There was uncertainty. There was this announcement. There was a cancellation and all that. And all of that has played out, and they had to go for the break, the almighty Christmas break, which was another break, one break too many. And then they resumed early January and began what seemed like the shortest first term ever. So there's a learning curve, and you wonder if the learning curve has been completed. But what is important is everyone is forced to go to school. Children had to brace up to more assignments, more homework. Parents had to assist them in achieving that. That's for those who were able to afford the school fees at the time. Because you also remember that a lot of these parents were out of job.
Yeah.
Companies, organizations had shut down, especially those who had nothing to do with ICT, those who had to do with markets. Markets were not yet opened, either in River State specifically, either for reasons of road construction, or otherwise the entire COVID thing to prevent the entire associations, unnecessary associations, because of the need for fiscal distancing. And all of that. So some parents have not been able to come back to the full economic stream. And so payment of fees for some of their children or wards has not been the same thing. So like I said earlier, the world cannot take the same ship in a hurry. So those who were working at company A are now required to work at company B, maybe a further distance from home. Parents would usually want to make a round movement. So I want to drop my children off at school on my way to work. But this time around, maybe you had a different job. Some, for example, you had Cool Wazobia Info Plaza, right? And then you get another job somewhere in Transamadi, for example. And your children are in schools just next door to you, next door to Lumosi. Now it disrupts your entire flow of things. So everything has been disrupted. Everything has been disrupted. More pressure on the parents to really deliver. For which I tell you the truth, no school would experience 100% of children returning, because some parents are really not able to afford these fees. So some children would have to go back to other schools that the parents can afford at the time. Otherwise, even the school business is not complete, because not all fees are paid. So there is some bit of struggle to run the school as they used to before the pandemic. So things are not the same anymore.
All right. Now, whenever anything hits the world on a global scale, some war or a pandemic such as this, it never really returns to the way it was. We've seen that with all the world wars. There were differences in human behavior, and so I want to believe that COVID, might be the same. What would you say the shifts have been, temporary and permanent? What shifts have we taken on that might end soon, and what have we taken on that will remain permanent after this pandemic, education-wise?
Well, the fact is, a lot of things, it goes either way. Something like education, for example, schools are resuming now. I think that the COVID thing opened our eyes to a level of preparedness to embrace change, to embrace the future. Like there were some crimes where education, yes, was stopped, but there was a learning process going on. However, learning could be, there were platforms that were developed. Conversation went virtual, everything went virtual. So in terms of education now, what happens to those children whose parents died in the course of the pandemic, either owing to the COVID-19 or otherwise other sicknesses? Maybe they couldn't find ready Medicare. We had stories of women who had to lose their babies or lose their lives on the way to the clinic owing to the lockdown. So now that is a permanent change for those homes, for those families. Mommy is never coming back. Dad is never coming back. It's a reality. And so some of those children would have to search for anything, maybe depend on uncles. Some will become child laborers and all that. It's a gory situation. But then it's not, the COVID-19 is one heartache that should never have happened to the world. Now for the temporary setbacks, we have markets opening up gradually now, but then there is the scarcity of food. Scarcity of food in the sense that you remember that just very recently, the entire easing of the lockdown opened us up into some kind of distress, economic distress, where the food suppliers from the north took to a strike, a certain strike. Now the strike seems to have been called off, but the price of food have not remained the same. Now we are all also opened up into a fuel hike, okay, and then the cost of transportation is not the same. Now this is added pressure on the pockets, the fast-leaning pockets of my situations to the entire thing. But you all look at the need for now we have like in the public schools, other schools, because of the need for physical health, we've got two kinds of school. So we have the morning session, we've got the afternoon session and all that. We will have children learn that this all in the bid to meet up with the curriculum. Okay, so that has changed. That has changed our scheme of things. Okay, so playtime. A child who's required to go to school at 12 o'clock to resume his day will not be required to play in the morning. Whenever back in the day, I go to school at 8 o'clock. I'm back home at 2, 3, extramural classes. I have my time to play and all that. Play is also part of my mental development. Play is part of the child's framework. But all of that is disrupted now. And so all of the benefits of play to the child will not be regained, except maybe on Sundays, maybe if he goes to some church or something, he comes back, he's allowed to play and all that. So everything has been disrupted, whether permanently or temporarily. But we expect the world to gradually come back to normal, even though it's a far cry from reality right now.
All right, so I like that you made those situations specific. That's obviously not everyone's story, but Talking about how education generally would be affected, lots of people have talked about virtual learning becoming a culture. Before an option, you could. There was always that. It sounded like a suggestion. Now it looks like lots of systems will definitely be carried by virtual learning. Do you see this becoming a major part of education and maybe the only one that exists in a couple of decades?
Not the only one, not the only one. But I think I mentioned it once on this platform. I was in some forum and we're looking at education and what we call edu penetration, and how quickly the world opening up to the need for education, and how that there weren't sufficient classrooms in terms of physical infrastructure to cater to the increasing demands for education globally. And so a lot of foreign universities, for example, began to consider the need for maybe increasing investment in virtual learning, what they call open and distance learning, ODL. So it's the future. Virtual learning is the future. A situation where I stay in Nigeria, I work in Nigeria, but I have my doctorate, for example, carried out in some university in the UK. And then they'll usually give the percentage exposures. So some would say it's a 90-10 scenario, 90% distance and 10% physical. So that's the future. That has been the future. But in a place like Nigeria, we didn't seem to embrace that very quickly. We just felt stereotyped to the normal physical learning arrangement. But COVID, that is one of the pluses, if you could say so, if that is a nice thing to say, that this will bring on us. Because in Nigeria, sometimes we like to be forced to do what we ought to do, what we ought to have done a long time ago. So the earlier we embrace open and distance learning, or otherwise virtual learning, as it is called in these times, the better for us. Because not everyone can be in the four walls of the classrooms anymore. You ask yourself how many schools actually did some real expansion. The easiest thing to do was just to split, morning session and afternoon session. But in terms of expansion, you move around the schools and you don't see real investments in physical infrastructure. Okay, so what about those children that were so distressed? Like you heard, in those times, some callers would say, "I will never take my children back to school until I hear that COVID-19 is a thing of the past." Now, COVID-19 is not yet a thing of the past. Okay, but then economies are opening up and measures are being eased out. So it shows, if we go by their words, that not all children are back to school yet. But learning has to take place. Otherwise, we'll get into stalemate, mental stalemate situations where some children would sit down at home and read books and all that. Because, you interact with children who were learning during the period, the pandemic period, and they'll tell you it's not the same thing. Children are inspired by some auntie, some teacher in school, but now maybe they're having to watch that teacher on some video, on some platform, where they can't ask questions. There isn't the real interaction. Some tried as much as they could to embrace phone calls and all that, but then there were the complaints of data and all that, still burdening on the parents. Some parents couldn't afford gadgets, and so they had to leave their phones and devices for their children. They will come back, and the children are playing games and visiting other sites and all that. So these were the adverse effects of all of this. And so it is that now you have many children whose parents can't afford to equip them with the tools, the right tools, having to share. And so it's not a personal effect anymore, but then it should be a plan. It should be a plan that just gets us, maybe in some short term, some 2-3 years, gets us into the reality of all of that. And it's possible.
All right, commercials have to play now, and coming up next, you'll be telling us whether the disparity between private and public education in River State is still as wide as it always has been. All right, that conversation, of course, happens after the break. It's still the Media Dialogue on 92.3 Nigeria Info.
Connect with your customers. Advertise on 92.3 Nigeria Info. Visit our downtown office at Shop 9, Mediatrix of All Gracies Plaza, opposite FIRS, Stadium Road, Port Harcourt, and book your commercials. Call 0817 001 8162. That is 700.
The morning. Get into the midday dialogue and tell you about the hard facts, and then let's talk into the chat station. All for you on 92.3 Nigeria Info. We crossfire in the morning. Get into the midday dialogue and tell you about the hard facts, and then let's talk into the chat station. All for you on 92.3 Nigeria Info. We crossfire in the morning. Get into the midday dialogue and tell you about the hard facts, and then let's talk into the chat station. All for you on 92.3 Nigeria Info. We crossfire in the morning. Get into the midday dialogue and tell you about the hard facts, and then let's talk into the chat station. All for you on 92.3 Nigeria Info. We crossfire in the morning. Get into the midday dialogue and tell you about the hard facts, and then let's talk into the chat station. All for you on 92.3 Nigeria Info. We crossfire in the morning. Get into the midday dialogue and tell you about the hard facts, and then let's talk into the chat station. All for you on 92.3 Nigeria Info. We crossfire in the morning. Get into the midday dialogue and tell you about the hard facts, and then let's talk into the chat station. All for you on 92.3 Nigeria Info. We crossfire in the morning. Get into the midday dialogue and tell you about the hard facts, and then let's talk into the chat station. All for you on 92.3.
Ability, welcome back. The Media Dialogue 92.3 Nigeria Info. Now we're talking about whether or not education has returned to status quo in River State. Have we returned to educational status quo? My guest, Ikechi Nwogu, has been helping with the answers to our many questions. Now, we had a 1 week holiday between first term and second term. We talked about that earlier. Does that have any effect on the child? Is it positive? Is it negative? Or, are you indifferent about that? What could you do?
Well, holiday is holiday to the children. It was short. It seemed like no holiday at all. But then, like in my home, I had to chat to the children. I reminded them that some of them ended their exams earlier than others, and so they had something more than 1 week. Okay, and that was the average case. I mean, not all the children would have ended all their exams on the same day. So, unlike in previous times, you end your exams and you come back to school to play, or maybe you're preparing for end of term activities. This time around, everybody just had to sit back at home and rest.
Yeah.
Because it was a cramped term. It was much shorter than normal. But then some smart schools were able to find their way around things. They tidied up the curriculum, and that was novel. Okay, even though it was increased pressure on the children. The children had to study harder. They had to brace up to more homework. But then, as much as that could work, the curriculum for that term was tidied up across board, and I think that should be commended. The schools should be commended for such efforts. The teachers as well for the great efforts they made. Some of them had to, pass through sleepless nights. So the holidays were required for them. Even though most of them didn't even go on a break, they had to prepare for the coming term as well. And I think every teacher at this time should be given a special award for that. Yeah.
When you say smart schools and smart choices, I immediately know you're talking about private schools. Forgive me for thinking along those lines, but it's nothing short of the truth. So, looking at what public education has always been and how much time that sector has had to maybe make some improvements, has there been any improvement? Has distance between private and public been reduced?
The thing is that it's a widening gap, especially at this time. it's a widening gap because for the private people, they see it like a real business, and so if you don't grow, if you don't improve your standards, then there is competition, and you'll just be eased out. Some schools actually had to close shop because they couldn't really meet up to the trending development. Okay, in the public sector, everything depends on government. So even where you have the vision as the leader of the school, the principal, the head teacher, headmaster, headmistress, if the government of the day cannot face up to your vision, then everything is just stifled. And that's the reality we have here. In Rivers State, the sad reality in Rivers State is a lot of times we think if Lagos doesn't do it, then we shouldn't be doing it. Okay, so a lot of things you see playing out can be compared to what is going on in Lagos. Okay, where there is some bit of government innovativeness. That is not to say we're not innovative as government here, but I think we can brace up to the visioning thing. A situation where, I commend the Rivers State government for the efforts they made throughout the pandemic, where with the provision of classes across board through TV and radio. Some radio stations at certain times were available for learning, okay, and all that. It was a good move. It was a good move, and it covered for everyone, whether you're in the public sector or in the private sector. But coming down to the nitty-gritties of learning, the real need for virtual learning, you realize that the government seems rather too slow. This is now not government for Rivers State alone, but government across board in Nigeria and some other African countries. So you realize that, this is the trend. This is what the world is racing up to. And government seems to be distracted with other things. So you don't see the clear-cut efforts, the sense of intentionality required to say, this is the future, and we're bracing up to the future. So you don't even know what the vision of the government is for education beyond maybe some bit of infrastructure and expansion and maybe more schools in the rural areas. Okay, and that's because maybe the government of the day seems more interested in infrastructural development. But I hope to see a day when we'll have some government in play that will be more concerned about other things, about the technical essence of governance, where we'll now begin to say, okay, some bit of infrastructural development here, but also some bit of the business of running the technicalities of government business. Okay, where we'll begin to consider the need for virtual learning. So you wonder how many computers have been bought on here, okay, public schools, just like it is done in the private schools. So in the private schools, one man takes a certain decision and says, okay, session 2021-2022 is 100% virtual learning session. Let's give it a try. That's because it is smaller magnitude to consider. But in the case of government is saddled with so much, I would say, let's just for the modesty of it, saddled with so much that the technicalities of governance seem like a distraction from their core. Okay, so that widens the gap further. Okay, a time comes when, there was once upon a time they said education in Nigeria will be dead by 2015. And we got to 2015 and we discovered that the private school gave us a lot of respite. Now, how many of us would want to, in this generation, would want to take our children to public schools? How many government officials would want to take their children to government-owned schools? And that begins to beg the need for improvement in standards. I would always advocate for us to build the kinds of schools that we would want our children to attend. And until we get to that point, we're not being fair with the children of those who can't afford the highbrow schools. So government has to wake up to the fact that the world is changing and they have to change with the times.
All right, Nwogu, thank you very much. So if you were to give a simple answer to my question, have we returned to educational status quo in River State, would that be a yes or a no?
70% yes, 30% no.
Oh, so work in progress, huh? All right.
Yeah, work in progress.
Thank you very much. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Thank you too. Bye.
Okay, so the WHO declared COVID a pandemic on the 11th of March 2020. 1 year later, how are we faring? Of course, we know the business end of it. Markets were shut for longer than they should have. Jobs were lost. The economy of pockets affected negatively. How did it affect the children? And now that they're back in school, would you say that things have returned to normal? I'm also concerned about the same economy. Now there's inflation. We're arguing about whether or not fuel price should be 165 or 175 or 200 and something. I don't know. But if fuel is more expensive, I bet you that parents have a harder time settling bills. And school fees is one of the many bills. So your kids are back in school. What's happening? How are you faring? Is it back to normal? Is it harder to pay the fees? How smooth is the wheel turning? 0817-923-0002. 0817-923-0003. 0817-923-0007. Of course, the female caller line is 0817-923-0009. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, brother.
Good morning.
My name is Ibiso from Odili Road.
Talk to me.
My brother, this school stuff of a teen, children going for 1 week holiday and coming back, to me, as a parent, the stress is on the parents because you just imagine that at school, your son or your daughter is back for 1 week, and the next week is going. You are preparing another school fees again to pay. The proprietors or the government, they are not considering the parents. Because if you watch well, now to me, the schools are gaining more than the parents.
Really?
Because
how?
The school calendar is short, and they are not considering the parents of maybe reducing the school fees for the parents. And they want my son is coming back home. They just give him a letter. 1 week holiday. This is the amount of next school fees. You understand?
Okay.
I intend meeting the PTA chairman for us to call the proprietor, discuss this thing because it's hard on the parents. If you have like 3 or 4 children in a school, and 1 week after you want to go and pay for 4 of them again, the school are making money. They are making money.
Ibiso, I understand that you're speaking from your position as a parent, but don't you think there's also pressure on the teachers, on the school?
See, maybe it's stressful on the teachers, but the owners of the school, the proprietors, they are making good money. Yes, the teachers.
It's not about making money. They have staff they have to pay. The same way that you're working to try to get money to pay their fees. They also have teachers.
See, Sam. See, if for example now, in a year, we have 3 times, Abi.
Mm-hmm.
And now, after 3 months, you know that you are going to pay social thing.
Okay.
You already program yourself. But this one now, in 1 week, you understand? So just this is the amount explanation. If it's in a year, you know that in a year, many times you are paying for your children's school fees.
Okay.
But now this one, everything is just, the way you didn't plan for it. And some parents cannot afford it. Let us be frank.
Yeah. Now, Ibiso, I completely understand. I understand what you're saying. But first of all, understand that last year was a unique year. We had lots of schools with teachers that they did not fire, and school was not in session. So you have staff members who you have to keep paying, and school is not in session. Secondly,
can I ask a question?
I think that with most schools, they wouldn't ask for the school fee immediately you're resuming. I know that schools have a flexibility in payment. Not everybody pays at resumption. So there would be some time, I believe, of course, maybe not every school. There will be some time to give the parents, some time to gather something. I mean, we all know what is happening.
Can I ask a question?
By all means, go ahead.
Okay. Now, like in Bayelsa last year, I think they cut down the school fees, which the proprietors and the government put it together.
Okay.
But in River State here, let me speak of River State. I'm living in Port Harcourt here. In River State here, they don't cut down anything. Rather, the parents are paying this thing. Yes, it's not that you must pay your children's school fees. But where I'm going to, the time limit, the stress is much on the parents. Any parent can call and tell you that the stress is much on them.
So, Ibiso, as a parent, what are you suggesting? What do you want to happen?
As a parent, what I'm suggesting, you understand? Now the proprietors, they should come and sit down with the parents. So, if for example, the school fees 150,000 naira. And now this short listing, short notice, if they can reduce it, not that like for them to run at loss, if they can reduce to maybe 120 or 100,000, many parents will be happy. Because you not tell me that in January, as they're going back to school, I pay school fees. Now in March again, my brother, if I'm working in the oil company, said I have other plans ahead.
All right, Ibiso, thank you very much. So his thoughts are basically it's heavy on the pocket. Now, I get that it's not easy. You know, I'm not here to make you feel like you don't have solid points. But you also have to understand that it's also someone's business. It's easy to say, oh, reduce the school fees, you know, take it down, we're suffering. You and I may not know exactly what it takes to run a school. Of course, I've been in close contact with some school owners, and sometimes what they spend money on, we don't even think about. Is it possible that school fees could be reduced? Yeah, of course. But again, it depends on the system. There are some schools that cannot afford to reduce fees. So as much as it's hard on you, it may be harder on them. I'm just saying, it's a possibility. Hello?
Yeah, Sam.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's Ikechi on the line.
Go ahead.
You know you're my mentor now.
Go ahead, Ikechi.
Yeah, Sam, see, I want to contribute a little. I just heard what you said, said. See, I don't want to encounter anybody. You see, I will run a school. And we know the condition we run this school.
Mm-hmm.
You see, there are so many things that has to do with school when you are running it. You find out that the staff's salary has to be paid.
Mm.
Then you find out that there are some facilities that is bad in the school premises where you're supposed to put them in order.
All right.
Then you find out, okay, look at now, number one, we just came back. Just at the period of time we came back, the borehole is bad. We have to change them. The water maintenance, we have to make sure that we maintain the water. Because generators that are just powered every day by day, we are running generator for almost anything 7 hours of the day. You have to buy diesel for that. All these things are being run into the school premises. It's not outside the school premises. You give the children conducive environment for them to learn. Then when you are not doing all these things to make sure that all these things are being facilitated in the school premises, how can the children get a good living? How can they aim a well by learning from the school? Mm-hmm. Can you employ a teacher that cannot be able to afford anything if the children need? That's one of the things we check. It's not just bringing the child to school and you are thinking of other things. There is parents that cannot even meet up as you are running it now. And in the school premises as I'm calling you, and I listen for what he has said so far. I'm not trying to encounter him, but I know that he's very heavy on pocket. But in the other side too, you will only know that there is people running that school. Their pocket cannot be able to carry for everything they do in the school. What we do is that if you have some power of maintenance you can do for now, you can pay. Then later you pay the remaining one because we know what people are passing through in this nation. It's not so easy.
All right.
That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ikechi. Good morning.
Good morning, Samara Kusinedu.
Good morning.
Yes, this is Henry from Polurumibo.
All right.
Sam, on your conversation, yes, I totally want to agree with your last caller and also want to agree with the previous caller. Sam, we know how the country, the economy of the country is today, that the average Nigerian man is living below $0.50 a day. Sam, as of today, news, dollar now in black market is about 500 and something. Now that you bring it into the average man. The man that is the salary is 18,000 naira and the child school fees is 45,000. Now he struggles to pay that first term. Within the interval of 1 month, he came back for another term again. And you expect that person to pay and pay within the appropriate time. Sam, it is not easy. Now I want to bring it back to the government of the day.
All right.
I think majority of our leaders today, the president, the governors, Sam, go and check their histories very well. All of them attended government schools. Because majority of these schools are being owned by these our top leaders. That is why our government school, our public schools, remains unkept. The governor of Rivers State today, did he attend a private school? The answer is no. The former governor of Rivers State today, did he attend private school? The answer is no. So why can't them put these schools in order so that the average man can be able to send his or her child? Let me tell you something. Me, myself, I don't believe in this big high school. I don't believe in them. Do you know why?
Why?
The school my children attend. So when I wanted to put them in that school, I was believing that the way the school look as if they don't have a good teacher there to teach these children very well.
Okay.
And believe me that I have a niece. When I brought this news within myself, as of 13 years, she cannot write ABCD. Sam, I'm sincerely telling you the truth. I know you would think it's not possible. But you know that when I enroll her in this school brushed this girl up. Today, in fact, every day I wake up in the morning, I say, God, thank you. A daughter of my elder sister. You understand? Now, if the government, the school, it looks small, and their fees is not much, but they can teach you very well. Why can't these big schools bring down their fees so that the common man, the child of the common man, can be able to attend there? You tell us you run diesel from morning to night. My brother Sam, believe me, go to that school. Some of those schools are telling you they are collecting those schools. There is no light. They don't run those gens.
Okay, so I again, as I said, now different systems run differently. When a school tells you what they spend just to stay running, it's not the same as a smaller school. And so you have to admit that it may not be feasible. Don't get me wrong. I understand it's difficult. But there are schools that literally cannot cut down their fees. They just can't. Because if they do, they will cease to exist. It is a business. So you and I would see the building, we will see the classrooms. In our head, the school fees we pay is enough to make these people millionaires. But when they show you what it takes to run that system, that might not be the case.
Yes, I agree with you. But also I want you to understand that there are schools too on this particular way that they will give you this high estimated bill. At the end of you go to that school, you are not seeing those things.
No, true.
I know so many of them. A friend of mine, the daughter is attending a school. I don't want to mention the name.
Please don't.
Sometimes I follow him to go and pick this child if I'm not doing anything as a stroll. Believe me, Sam, if I tell you the fees this young man paid and there is no light, not even a fan in that particular place. As I'm talking with you now, the young man has withdrawn his child from that school. Now, you see, if we begin to run these institutions then in a way that the common man cannot be able to go to that place, then are we helping the society? The answer is no. That's why I mentioned to you that the leadership of today, the people we have in power today, did they attend these schools, these highest school fees of 500,000, 300,000? Did they attend? They did not.
Okay, thank you very much. One thing you must understand is there would always be the premium option. The common man needs to go to school, it is true. But not everybody will go to the common man's school. Everything has a level. Somebody leaves their own town, goes to a different city, they want to spend a night in a hotel. There are different levels of hotels. All the hotels in that state cannot be the same star. So, the common man would have his level of hotel, and the uncommon man would definitely have his level. I drive a pretty basic car, but you cannot compare what I drive to the car of a politician or a very successful businessman, because there are levels. So even with education, you must have premium schools. You must have schools whose fees run in hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions. And if we say, let us make the common man afford every kind of school, it does not make sense. That's not how life works. There would always be levels. There would always be distinction. There will always be different classes, whether or not you like it. But let it be that, well, those at the lowest level can get some level of quality. So good looking out to the common man. B.O.B. says, you took most of the words out of my mouth. What's remaining in my mouth is the short holiday is to try correct the academic calendar. 3 years, 3 terms a year is still 3 terms, no matter the length of the holiday. All right, B.O.B., thank you very much for that. 11 o'clock is upon us. The news usually happens on the hour. And after that, we're going from education to business. No one away.